Book 9, the Book of Eternal Night, Canto 1, Towards the Black Void. That mightier spirit turned its mastering gaze on life and things, inheritor of a work left to it unfinished from her halting past, when yet the mind, a passionate learner, toiled, and ill-shaped instruments were crudely moved. Transcended now was the poor human rule. A sovereign power was there, a godlike will. A moment yet she lingered motionless and looked down on the dead man at her feet. Then, like a tree recovering from a wind, she raised her noble head. Fronting her gaze, something stood there, unearthly, somber, grand, a limitless denial of all being that wore the terror and wonder of a shape. In its appalling eyes, the tenebrous form bore the deep pity of destroying gods. A sorrowful irony curved the dreadful lips that speak the word of doom. Eternal night, in the dire beauty of an immortal face, pitying arose, receiving all that lives forever into its fathomless heart, refuge of creatures from their anguish and world pain. His shape was nothingness made real. His limbs were monuments of transience, and beneath brows of unwearying calm, large, godlike lids, silent, beheld the writhing serpent, life. Unmoved, their timeless, wide, unchanging gaze had seen the unprofitable cycles pass, survived the passing of unnumbered stars, and sheltered still the same immutable orbs. The two opposed each other with their eyes, woman and universal God. Around her, piling their void, unbearable loneliness upon her mighty, uncompanioned soul, many inhuman solitudes came close. Vacant eternities, forbidding hope, laid upon her their huge and lifeless look, and to her ears, silencing earthly sounds, a sad and formidable voice arose, which seemed the whole adverse world's. Unclasp, it cried, thy passionate influence, and relax, O slave of nature, changing tool of changeless law, who vainly rides rebellion to my yoke. Thy elemental grasp, weep and forget. Entomb thy passion in its living grave. Leave now the once loved spirit's abandoned robe. Pass lonely back to thy vain life on earth. It ceased. She moved not, and it spoke again, lowering its mighty key to human chords, yet a dread cry behind the uttered sounds, echoing all sadness and immortal scorn, moaned like a hunger of far wandering waves. Wilt thou forever keep thy passionate hold, thyself a creature doomed like him to pass, denying his soul death's calm and silent rest. Relax thy grasp. This body is earth's and thine. His spirit now belongs to a greater power. Woman, thy husband suffers. Savitri drew back her heart's force that clasped his body still, where from her lap renounced on the smooth grass, softly it lay, as often before in sleep, when from their couch she rose in the white dawn, called by her daily tasks. Now too, as if called, she rose and stood gathered in lonely strength, like one who drops his mantle for a race, and waits the signal motionlessly swift. She knew not to what course. Her spirit above, on the crypt summit of her secret form, like one left sentinel on a mountain crest, a fiery-footed splendor, puissant-winged, watched, flaming silent, with her voiceless soul like a still sail upon a windless sea. White, passionless, it rode, an anchored might, waiting what far-ridged impulse should arise out of the eternal depths and cast its surge. Then death, the king, leaned boundless down, as leans night over tired lands, when evening pales and fading gleams break down the horizon's walls, nor yet the dusk grows mystic with the moon. The dim and awful Godhead rose erect from his brief stooping to his touch on earth, and, like a dream that wakes out of a dream, forsaking the poor mold of that dead clay, another luminous Satyavan arose, starting upright from the recumbent earth, as if someone over viewless borders stepped, emerging on the edge of unseen worlds. In the earth's day, the silent marvel stood between the mortal woman and the God. Such seemed he, as if one departed came wearing the light of a celestial shape, splendidly alien to the mortal air. The mind sought things long loved, and fell back foiled from unfamiliar hues, beheld yet longed by the sweet radiant form unsatisfied, incredulous of its too bright hints of heaven. Too strange the brilliant phantasm to life's clasp, desiring the warm creations of the earth, reared in the ardor of material suns, the senses seized in vain a glorious shade. Only the spirit knew the spirit still, and the heart divined the old loved heart, though changed. Between two realms he stood, not wavering, but fixed in quiet, strong expectancy, like one who, sightless, listens for a command. So were they immobile on that earthly field, powers not of earth, though one in human clay. On either side of one, two spirits strove. Silence battled with silence, vast with vast. Book 9, The Book of Eternal Night, Canto 1, towards the black void. But now the impulse of the path was felt, moving from the silence that supports the stars to touch the confines of the visible world. Luminous, he moved away. Behind him, death went slowly with his noiseless tread. As seen in dream-built fields, a shadowy herdsman glides behind some wanderer from his voiceless herds. And Savitri moved behind eternal death. Her mortal pace was equaled with the gods. Wordless, she traveled in her lover's steps, planting her human feet where his had trod, into the perilous silences beyond. At first, in a blind stress of woods, she moved, with strange, inhuman paces on the soil, journeying as if upon an unseen road. Around her, on the green and imaged earth, the flickering screen of forests ringed her steps. Its thick, luxurious obstacle of boughs besieged her body, pressing dimly through in a rich realm of whispers palpable, and all the murmurous beauty of the leaves rippled around her like an emerald robe. But more and more, this grew an alien sound, and her old, intimate body seemed to her a burden which her being remotely bore. Herself lived far in some uplifted scene, where to the trance-claimed vision of pursuit, soul presences in a high, spaceless dream, the luminous spirit glided stilly on, and the great shadow traveled vague behind. Still, with an amorous crowd of seeking hands, softly entreated by their old desires, her senses felt earth's close and gentle air cling round them, and in troubled branches knew uncertain treadings of a faint foot wind. She bore dim fragrances, far callings touched. The wild bird's voice and its winged rustle came, as if a sigh from some forgotten world. Earth stood aloof, yet near. Round her it wove its sweetness and its greenness and delight, its brilliance suave of well-loved vivid hues, sunlight arriving to its golden noon, and the blue heavens and the caressing soil. The ancient mother offered to her child her simple world of kind, familiar things. But now, as if the body's sensuous hold, curbing the godhead of her infinite walk, had freed those spirits to their grander road, across some boundary's intangible bar, the silent God grew mighty and remote in other spaces, and the soul she loved lost its consenting nearness to her life into a deep and unfamiliar air, enormous, windless, without stir or sound. They seemed to enlarge away, drawn by some wide, pale distance from the warm control of earth, and her grown far. Now they would escape. Then, flaming from her body's nest, alarmed, her violent spirit soared at Satyavan. Out mid the plunge of heaven-surrounded rocks, so in a terror and a wrath divine, from her eyrie streams against the ascending death, indignant at its crouching point of steel, a fierce she-eagle threatened in her brood, borne on a rush of puissance and a cry, outwinging like a mass of golden fire. So, on a spirit's flaming outrush borne, she crossed the borders of dividing sense. Like pale, discarded sheaths dropped dully down, her mortal members fell back from her soul. A moment of a secret body's sleep. Her trance knew not of sun or earth or world. Thought, time, and death were absent from her grasp. She knew not self. Forgotten was Savitri. All was the violent ocean of a will, where lived captive to an immense caress, possessed in a supreme identity, her aim, joy, origin, Satyavan alone. Her sovereign, prisoned in her being's core, he beat there like a rhythmic heart, herself but different still, one loved, enveloped, clasped, a treasure saved from the collapse of space. Around him, nameless, infinite, she surged, her spirit fulfilled in his spirit, rich with all time, as if love's deathless moment had been found, a pearl within eternity's white shell. Then, out of the engulfing sea of trance, her mind rose, drenched to light, streaming with hues of vision, and, awake once more to time, returned to shape the lineaments of things and live in borders of the seen and known. Onward, the three still moved in her soul scene, as if pacing through fragments of a dream. She seemed to travel on, a visioned shape, imagining other musers like herself, by them imagined in their lonely sleep. Ungrasped, unreal, yet familiar, old, like clefts of unsubstantial memory. Scenes often traversed, never lived in, fled past her, unheeding to forgotten goals. In voiceless regions, they were travelers, alone in a new world where souls were not, but only living moods. A strange, hushed, weird country was round them. Strange, far skies above. A doubting space where dreaming objects lived within themselves, their one unchanged idea. Weird were the grasses, weird the treeless plains, weird ran the road, which like fear hastening towards that of which it has most terror, passed, phantasmal, between pillared conscious rocks, somber and high, gates brooding, whose stone thoughts lost their huge sense beyond in giant night. Enigma of the unconscious sculptural sleep, symbols of the approach to darkness old, and monuments of her titanic reign, opening to depths like dumb, appalling jaws that wait a traveler down a haunted path. Attracted to a mystery that slays, they watched across her road, cruel and still. Sentinels they stood of dumb necessity, mute heads of vigilant and sullen gloom, carved muzzle of a dim, enormous world. Then, to that chill, sear, heavy line arrived, where his feet touched the shadowy march's brink. Turning arrested, luminous Satyavan looked back with his wonderful eyes at Savitri. But death pealed forth his vast, abysmal cry. O mortal, turn back to thy transient kind. Aspire not to accompany death to his home, as if thy breath could live where time must die. Think not thy mind-born passion strength from heaven, to uplift thy spirit from its earthly base, and, breaking out from the material cage, to upbuoy thy feet of dream in groundless naught, and bear thee through the pathless infinite. Only in human limits man lives safe. Trust not in the unreal lords of time. Immortal, deeming this image of thyself, which they have built on a dream's floating ground. Let not the dreadful goddess move thy soul to enlarge thy vehement trespass into worlds where it shall perish like a helpless thought. Know the cold tombstones of thy hopes in life. Armed vainly with the ideal's borrowed might, dare not to outstep man's bound and measured force. Ignorant and stumbling in brief boundaries pent, he crowns himself the world's mock suzerain, tormenting nature with the works of mind. O sleeper, dreaming of divinity, wake trembling mid the indifferent silences in which thy few weak chords of being die. Impermanent creatures, sorrowful foam of time, your transient loves bind not the eternal gods. The dread voice ebbed in the consenting hush, which seemed to close upon it, wide, intense, a wordless sanction from the jaws of night. The woman answered not. Her high, nude soul, stripped of the girdle of mortality, against fixed destiny and the grooves of law, stood up in its sheer will, a primal force. Still like a statue on its pedestal, lone in the silence and to vastness bared, against midnight's dumb abysses piled in front, a columned shaft of fire and light she rose.